This is Dynamics here again to talk about artificial intelligence and game design, focused on Skyrim: The Elder Scrolls V. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone who shared their observations, suggestions, and criticisms in the first video. I greatly value the feedback from the gaming community. Before I get into any other details about the newest mod release, I want to cover items that were changed thanks to audience submissions. Thanks to your posts and messages, the following items have been implemented in the new version. Rather than having enemies spawn back independently, there's now a handy pull-down chain for bringing everyone back to life at the same time. It also gives the player a 15-second warning to get ready for the next wave. Several folks mentioned the importance of immersion, and as such, the arena is a bit darker, so light becomes an important factor. You can see that the Forsworn have new added behaviors with torches, and players have to sometimes choose between stealth and being able to clearly see their surroundings. This change also gives advantages to characters with night vision. This way, the player's choices for their character become meaningful beyond just superficial changes to appearance. A few people mentioned the lightning wall was a bit spammy, so that's been changed. Mages now tend to use the spell more sparingly, and don't automatically make heavy barricades immediately. There's also new semi-random behavior to make them choose different spots to set up large sets of walls. And now, let's move on to the main presentation of new AI tweaks and enemy abilities. The goal of these modifications is to present a variety of new challenges to the player without killing them outright. At the top of the list are the Forsworn's new magical poison bows and arrows. They can stack in reducing stamina recovery, and have a percentage chance to severely hinder the melee capabilities of the player. A few folks mentioned that the first version was easy for stealth or ranged hit-and-run characters. These changes make it harder on characters who rely on high DPS and superior movement to keep an edge. Speaking of which, the Forsworn now have a pair of hunting dogs. These make it much harder for stealth and ranged players to move unnoticed. When chasing down prey, the Forsworn will also use torches, putting more pressure on stealthy players. Lastly, if the player manages to kill a dog, the Forsworn will wait until the player moves far enough away from the corpse and then resurrect it for one last charge. Next, you'll notice while the dogs are alive, the Forsworn will carefully tend to them, casting Heal Other and Courage whenever possible. Similarly, the player will notice that both the dogs and the Forsworn have more closely scaled health to the player's level. This allows for a much more even challenge. Next, you'll notice the Forsworn do their best to support each other using the buddy system. When they're both healthy and strong, they'll stay a good distance apart to allow them to surround me. However, once injured, they get closer together and try to protect each other. This includes casting Heal Other or Courage on each other, as well as providing covering fire or charging headlong into combat to protect the injured partner. Since Heal Other is so much more powerful than their self-healing spell, it's in their best interest to protect each other whenever possible. Along the same lines, there's been more dynamic behavior coded into the system. This means that the semi-random behaviors of the characters depends on several variables around them, including the status of allies, what weapon they have drawn at the moment, and other circumstantial variables. This complex environmental dependency prevents enemies from becoming flat and predictable. It also encourages players to stay engaged and pay attention to subtle details. For example, seeing a wizard with a staff at the ready means they're much more likely to get up in the player's face than hang back and take a defensive position. But since the behavior is semi-randomized, the player has to keep on their toes. Speaking of which, some new refined clustering has been added to the dungeon. Watch here as the mage fakes left, hides behind the pillar, and then makes a safe getaway when I fall for the bait. He's now safe behind his minion, as well as several more lightning walls. So, overall, here's what the mod should and should not provide for the player. It should allow the player to experiment with new styles of playing without the threat of dying instantly. However, it should also tax the player to the point where they have to dig into their reserve, such as using potions. Lastly, it should offer new surprising features of enemy weapons and spells which don't kill the player instantly, but encourage him or her to adapt and change tactics to the new situation. Now, the mod should not give people the same kind of challenge they can find anywhere else in Skyrim, and should not give the player the same kind of static challenge every time he or she plays the game. Players should be challenged, so trying the same strategy over and over again doesn't always guarantee the same exact results. This prevents that asleep at the wheel kind of feeling that you can get with some other games. Ultimately, this mod should give the players a varying challenge. It forces the player to be adaptable and keep an open mind to a broad set of choices rather than just a handful of predictable enemy patterns. The player can then rapidly change strategies if their current plan goes south. So, the bottom line is there is no one optimal way to win. It's not the kind of thing a player can go and look up on a wiki somewhere. A tactic may be optimal for one instance, but random variables and circumstantial changes, such as moving to a location a tad early or late, can change the entire outcome. As such, it gives the player a lot of replay value, because there's no one simple pattern to memorize. The game encourages and rewards players who are the most engaged, the most observant, and the most versatile. This has been another presentation by Ether Dynamics. Keep your eye on this channel for an upcoming broad discussion of game design, and an in-depth recap on all the great comments I've gotten on YouTube and on other threads. And as always, thanks for watching.